There is a person in your life who caused you pain, deliberately, consciously, who looked you in the eyes and did it anyway, who destroyed something important, a relationship, trust, years of your life, and walked away, without consequences, without apology. Maybe they're still out there living as if nothing happened. Maybe they've already died. And that's the most terrifying thought of all, the idea that they just died. And that was it. No accountability, no reckoning, darkness and the end. Justice doesn't exist. It's exactly that thought, that bad people get away with it forever, that I want to break down today. Not from a religious standpoint, not from a moral one. From the standpoint of what thousands of people who have experienced clinical death describe, and what Edgar Cayce said in trance for 40 years. Because their answer is not what you expect. It's far more complex, far more frightening, and far more just than anything you've ever been told. Don't turn this off, because by the end of this video your understanding of justice will change forever. Let's start with what most people expect to hear. A bad person dies and goes to hell. Fire, torment, eternal punishment. Justice is served. It's a comforting idea. It gives you the sense that the universe isn't blind, that evil doesn't go unpunished, that someone up there is keeping score. The problem is that neither the thousands of people who have experienced clinical death nor Cayce described exactly that. They described something different, something that at first glance seems less satisfying, but is actually the most precise form of justice that exists. Because external punishment is one thing, but what they described is a completely different level, a level at which no pretending is possible, no mask works, no justification is accepted, because there you don't meet a judge, you meet yourself. The first thing that happens to every soul after death, regardless of who they were, is what NDE researchers call the life review. And this is where things get genuinely uncomfortable. Not abstractly uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable. You see your entire life, every second, every word, every decision, but not as an observer, as every participant simultaneously. Every person you hurt, you feel their pain, from the inside. Everyone you helped, you feel their joy. Every moment when you could have acted differently and didn't, you experience again, but now from the other side. For a good person, this can be painful. For a bad person, it is something that defies description. Picture a person who systematically humiliated others, who took pleasure in other people's pain, who manipulated, used, destroyed, and never felt anything but their own satisfaction. In the life review, this person feels everything, every humiliation they caused, as their victim, from the inside. Every moment when someone cried because of them, they cry now. Every moment when someone felt destroyed, they feel that destruction, not as an outside observer, as that person, completely, with no way to switch it off, no way to say, so what, no way not to feel it. Cayce described this not as a punishment assigned by someone outside, but as a natural law of existence, as physics. You caused pain, you will feel it, not because someone decided to punish you, but because everything you did to others is literally part of the fabric of reality. And you pass through that fabric, through every pattern in it that you created yourself. Now, a real story. Because theory only takes you so far. Jeffrey, an American, 43 years old, a heart attack, 18 minutes of clinical death. In life, a man who described himself as tough, a businessman who stopped at nothing, who destroyed competitors, who cheated on his wife for 20 years, who watched his children cry and didn't change, who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. When he came back, the first thing he said to the doctor was, "I need to call everyone I ever hurt. Everyone." The doctor thought it was shock, but Jeffrey explained. During those 18 minutes he had lived the life of every person he had hurt, not his life, their lives. He saw his wife crying in the bathroom so the children wouldn't hear. He felt what she felt. Not saw, felt. He saw his younger son at 12 years old deciding he wasn't good enough because his father never came to his games. He felt that decision, that feeling of being invisible to your own father, He saw the business partner he had forced out, explaining to his wife that they had lost everything. How she looked at him. Jeffrey described it like this: "It was 1,000,000 times worse than any physical punishment I could have imagined. Because I couldn't say it wasn't my fault. I couldn't find a justification. I saw the cause and effect with absolute clarity. Every one of my actions, every consequence, every person it touched. I couldn't lie, even to myself. It was the most honest moment of my life, and the most horrific." He came back a different person, not gradually, immediately. He called his wife and told her everything, called the former business partner, found people he had hurt and hadn't seen in years, not because he became religious, but because he knew what he felt there was real, and the only way to ease that weight was to close what could still be closed here, while there was still time. Now, the question everyone asks. All right, a bad person feels the pain they caused, but then what? Is that it? They suffer, and then what? Cayce answered this question very specifically, and his answer breaks into two parts. The first, what happens immediately after the life review. The second part, what happens in the long term. And the second part is what most people have never heard. Immediately after the life review, the soul finds itself at a level that corresponds to its vibration. Cayce explained this through resonance. You don't end up where you're sent. You end up where you correspond to. Your soul, with its frequency, with who you were, what you thought, what you did, ends up in a space with the same frequency. This is not punishment, this is physics, like oil that always rises above water, not because someone decided that's how it should be, but because that is its nature. A soul that spent its entire life generating dark energy, resentment, hatred, manipulation, cruelty, ends up in a space of dark energy. Not because God is angry, but because that is the only place where it resonates. A soul filled with love and honesty ends up in a space of love and honesty, for the same reason. For a bad person, this means the following. They find themselves surrounded by souls like them, people who lived the same way, who also caused pain, who also manipulated and used. And here, a detail that NDE researchers document again and again. This space is described as a place of complete absence of love, not fire and torment, emptiness, absolute, total. When you spent your entire life taking from others, using their warmth, their care, their love, and suddenly find yourself in a place where there is none of that, at all. Where all around you are others who only take. Where no one gives because no one ever learned to give. This is described as the coldest, darkest, loneliest experience that is possible, not because it hurts, but because there is no warmth whatsoever. And you know that this is the result of you yourself. Howard Storm, an American art professor and atheist who experienced clinical death in 1985 and ended up in exactly such a place, described it this way. There were entities, many of them, but not one of them could give warmth, because they had none. They could only take, and when there was nothing left to take, they turned on each other, not because they were evil in our sense of the word, but because it was the only thing they knew how to do. It was a world in which everyone was a resource for everyone else. That is exactly how Storm lived his life, using people as resources. And that is exactly the world he ended up in, not as punishment, as a mirror. Now, the second part of Cayce's answer, the long-term picture. And this is where things break apart any simple notion of justice. Cayce said, even the darkest souls don't stay there forever. This is not a life sentence. It is a lesson, the harshest, the most painful, but a lesson. And when a soul, through suffering, through awareness, through experiencing the consequences of its actions, begins to understand what it did, it begins to change. Slowly, very slowly, but it changes. Cayce said that some souls spend time in these dark states equivalent to hundreds of Earth years, because change only happens through complete acceptance of responsibility. And that is the most difficult process that exists, especially for those who spent their entire lives avoiding responsibility. This does not mean that justice doesn't exist. It means that justice works deeper than we thought, not as an external punishment, but as an internal transformation that happens through completely living out the consequences of your own actions. And here, the most unexpected moment in this entire video, the one I couldn't leave out, because it changes everything. Some people who experienced clinical death, including those who had caused serious harm to others during their lives, described meeting their victims, the people they had hurt. And here is what they described. The victims were not angry. They were not demanding revenge. They were not punishing anyone. They understood. They looked with something described as compassion, not because what was done to them was acceptable, but because on the other side, with complete understanding of the nature of existence, revenge loses its meaning. The pain was real. The consequences were real. But the desire to cause pain in return was absent. And that, for the people who had caused harm, was described as the most unbearable thing of everything they experienced there. Because the anger of a victim is something you can fight against, argue with, dismiss. But compassion from someone you hurt is something you cannot dismiss. It is a mirror in which you cannot help but see yourself, what this means for you, not abstractly, specifically, right now. First, justice exists, not in the form we were promised, not as an external punishment assigned by a judge, but as an internal, inevitable process in which every person passes through the consequences of every action they ever took. It is impossible to cause pain and not feel it, impossible to destroy someone's life and not live that destruction from the inside. Physics makes no exceptions. Second, the person who caused you pain and walked away unpunished didn't walk away. They are carrying it with them. Every action is recorded, every consequence is registered, and the encounter with it is inevitable, not because someone is taking revenge, but because that is how reality is built. Third, and this is the most important one, what happens to bad people after death is not an argument for passivity, not a reason to sit back and wait for the universe to sort things out. It is a mirror that is looking at you right now, because what you do today is what you will be living through later. From the other side, every word, every decision, every moment, when you could have acted differently. One final question, an honest one. Is there someone in your life you caused pain to and never resolved it? Not the person who caused pain to you, the person you caused pain to, something small, possibly forgotten, possibly seeming insignificant at the time. Cayce said, "Every unresolved action is a debt that is looking for its resolution, here or there, but better, here." While there is still the chance, write in the comments, did this video change how you think about justice? Did you believe that retribution exists? Or did you think bad people just get away with it? Because the answer to that question matters more than it seems. It says something about what you actually believe, and about how that belief shapes the way you live every single day.